Now for something a little different. That is that Denny's going to try to be technical, which is, this is like could be a very big mistake. All right, we got it. Yes, this is all good. There, good. Look, huh? So today's sermon is a little different. I'm going to warn you, I won't get to the text until 3/4 of the way through the sermon. So don't sit there going, where the heck's the Bible in this whole thing, It's coming. We'll get there. So today I want to talk about kind of normative, dominant culture or privilege. Oh, this is a good idea. Help. They're leaving. This is a rebellion. That's it. The choir is so much for preaching to the choir. They're out of here. I love it. I forgot to do that. So, there was a college professor who had, for a couple decades, actually, kind of getting to know you. Microphone, yes it is. Hello, thank you, though. They had she gave this exercise to their class at the beginning of every year, and it was about identity identifiers. In 60 seconds, they were given a piece of paper, and they had to write down as many words that identified them as they could. And so, she'd say go, and they'd be writing like crazy to get all these identity things out there. And there were things like, I'm shy, or I'm athletic, or I'm very intelligent. A number of those kinds of things all got listed, and they got to share them with other people. Over the course of time, what the professor recognized was a commonality in the way these came. That is, that people of color would name their race or their nationality as an identifier, so Puerto Rican, black, Asian, but white people never did. Women often would put woman or female as an identifier, but men never did. Jews almost always put Jewish as an identifier, but Christians almost never said Christian. Homosexuals who were comfortable with their sexual orientation would put I'm gay or lesbian, but straight people never said that they were straight. So she's puzzling about this. What's going on with this? And it lines up with a theory of social development, the development of a culture, which says that those who are in the normative or dominant group, their identifiers they disappear. They're like, the air we breathe. You don't notice that they're there because it's the dominant thing. So women, being less dominant in the culture, are likely to say, oh yeah, I'm a woman. But men are not likely to say that they're men. The model of our culture turns out to be a white, young male who is straight and is also financially secure. So that's kind of the model of what it means to be a human being in our culture. And the thing is that model it's unconscious. We just kind of accept it as the way things are. And so if you see yourself in relationship to that, you're more likely to identify yourself as being different than that. You see what I'm talking about? Make sense? Okay, so then in cultural development, this group, the model which I just said for you, the normative, the dominant group creates a rationale for being dominant that has more to do than just numbers. And, historically speaking, black people have been seen as less intelligent. Women have been presumed to be less emotionally stable than men. I tried telling that to Sally once. Didn't work. She got a little emotionally less stable. But of course, there was quite a good reason for it, wasn't there? But that points out another thing, doesn't it? That we can, it's easier to make funnies or jokes about the subordinate people than it is about the dominant people. It's just kind of the way it goes in cultural development. So the dominant group develops an irrational rationale for the subdominant group, and they respond, the subdominant group, the subordinate group, responds in two different ways. One way is that they internalize the definition of the dominant group. So less intelligent or less emotionally stable, or homosexuals are less morally upright than straight people. Those kinds of, so they get internalized, and those people in some of the folks in the subordinate groups then act in that fashion. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, you see. Then people in the dominant group can say, well, look, there's these folks and they admit, or they act like they're less stable or they're less intelligent. And so one way that they respond to that that subordinate groups respond is by internalizing it. The other way that they respond is by rebelling or refusing to comply. They see that there's an inequity, so they're rebelling against that inequity, or they refuse to cooperate with what the messages are that are coming from the dominant culture. It like I was saying with the youngsters, it also has to do with age. I mean, all of us in this room probably fit into both categories in different kinds of ways. You know what I mean? Every person here, so I'm an old white guy. White and guy puts me in the dominant group. Old puts me in the subdominant group. So if I'm with a group of 20-somethings, it doesn't happen all that often. But when I am, I start, they're talking and I want to get into the conversation. And so I try to get into it and I make some kind of statement and they go, very nice. Very nice, yeah. Yeah, shut up, yeah. Well, they're not sure how to deal with me, and I try to fit in with them, so I try to use some language like groovy or something like that. That doesn't work at all. I don't understand why. Yeah, far out. Talk about exposing your age. And so I want to be clear that all of us deal with this in some way. The dynamic that happens between the dominant group and the subdominant group, the subordinate group, is that the dominant group does not have to consider who the subordinates are, really. They're kind of functional for them. I mean, think Downton Abbey or Upstairs, Downstairs, right? When the noble folks upstairs, you know, they don't really know a whole lot about the lives of the folks who are the servants, so they don't really know a lot about what's going on. But if one thing happens upstairs with one of the noble folks, all of the servants know it in about 3 minutes. You know, it's this big communication thing and everybody knows. And the reason that is because those in the subordinate group have to know, in order to survive, what is going on in the dominant group. Because the dominant group determines the outcome of their lives. So they have to know about the dominant group. Make sense? Now, my sister Linda, I don't think you guys have ever met her. She's a wonderful human being. She's 10 years younger than I am. And she has she adopted a little boy who is a person of color. His dad is white, his mother is black. And she adopted this little boy, Bradley. He's a year older than my grandson, Otto. He's really a sweetheart of a kid. Plays the piano. And she goes to a very big church in the Midwest. And her black friends said to her, you got to start teaching Bradley about how he can survive. Because he's getting to the age where he might get in trouble with the law. And so she sent me this video, which as a techno whiz I'm going to show you right now. Whoops.
10 rules.
10 rules.
10 rules.
10 rules of survival.
10 rules of survival if stopped by the police.
Number 1, be polite and respectful when stopped by the police.
Be polite.
Be respectful.
Remember that your goal is to get home safely.
Your goal is to get home safely.
Your goal is to get home safely. I'm sorry.
Number 2, if you feel your rights have been violated, you and your parents have a right to file a formal complaint with your local police jurisdiction.
Number 3, do not, under any circumstances, get in an argument with the police.
Number 4, always remember that anything you say or do can be used against you in court.
Number 5, keep your hands in plain sight.
Make sure the police can see your hands at all times.
Number 6, avoid physical contact with police officers. Do not make any sudden movements and keep your hands out of your pockets.
Number 7,
Do not.
Do not.
Do not, do not, do not, do not.
Do not run, even if you are afraid. Number 8, even if you believe you are innocent, do not resist arrest.
Number 9, if you are arrested, do not make any statements about the incident until you are able to meet with a lawyer or public defender.
Number 10, stay calm and remain in control.
Watch your words. Watch your body language.
Watch your emotions. Remember.
Remember, your goal is to get home safely.
Get home safely.
So my sister Linda had no idea. You know, she's a white person like me. You know, she had no idea that black youngsters needed to be taught these kinds of things in order to get home safely. It's a very powerful kind of expression, and I'm grateful that she told me about it. You see, the culture, the subordinate culture does have to learn its way around the dominant culture, because the dominant culture is largely unconscious about it. Like I'm unconscious about my age. I think I'm 23 and I'm not. And we're unconscious about the privilege that we have as white folks. So I promised you we'd get to the text, and here it is. Jesus is telling us about the widows and the mite. She gives these 2 little coins, and Jesus says, she gives more than those who are rich. She gives her whole life. Now let's just take that literally for a moment, because I believe that's what Jesus was saying. This was not metaphoric. She does in fact give her whole life. And here's why she gives her whole life. Because the scribes, who are the model of Jewish society at that time, they are educated, they are wealthy, they are legal experts, they help other people make decisions, they are religious. They walk around with long flowing robes, as Charlie read, with pious looks on their faces. They look for the best seats at banquets and at the temples, and they devour the widows' houses. The whole book of Mark up to this point has been a diatribe against the scribes. But the scribes don't see themselves this way. They are simply part of the dominant normative culture. They're the model of the dominant normative culture. They see themselves as doing very good things. They are helping these widows. Widows, of course, cannot manage their own estates. So they had to have somebody else manage their estates. Men, of course, because women aren't smart enough to do that. And of course, in the ancient world, women aren't educated, so there's some truth to that, a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. So the scribes take over their estates, and of course, they pay themselves something out of these transactions. And over the course of time, without anybody looking over their shoulder, checking the work that they're done, there is much scamming that goes on. And they devour the widow's houses, the houses being the estate of the woman. Her husband has died. See what I'm saying? So here you have these wonderful, quotes, scribes, and Jesus sees what's going on. Jesus sees that they are people of privilege who are taking advantage of a subordinate group in their society. And he says to the people, beware of the scribes. He's saying, be conscious. Be conscious of who they are and what they do. And by the way, it's all the more dangerous if it's unconscious than conscious. So the idea is to become conscious. And Jesus says, well, he doesn't say it here, but he says later and earlier, pulling from way back in the Torah, that the job of the scribes is to protect the widow, the orphan, and the oppressed. That's their job. And the reason he is so upset is they are betraying their job by taking advantage of the very people they are supposed to care for. All the time thinking that they are actually caring for them. So, here we are. We're members of the dominant culture here. We're white people, most of us. We're not a lot of folks of color. And what's the goal? What should we do? Well, the point is not to feel guilty. The point is to be aware. To be aware of who it is that we are, the privilege that we have, the damage that we could do if we are not aware of the privilege. Whoa, I don't have a light there yet, do I?
I once saw a high school teacher lead a
Hold
simple,
on.
powerful...
Somebody get a hold of the technical guy in the back. Is it working now? Oh, thank you.
I once saw a high school teacher lead a simple, powerful exercise to teach his class about privilege and social mobility. He started by giving each student a scrap piece of paper and asked them to crumple it up. Then he moved the recycling bin to the front of the room. He said, "The game is simple. You all represent the country's population, and everyone in the country has a chance to become wealthy and move into the upper class. To move into the upper class, all you must do is throw your wadded up paper into the bin while sitting in your seat." The students in the back of the room immediately piped up saying, "This is unfair." They could see the rows of students in front of them had a much better chance. Everyone took their shots, and, as expected, most of the students in the front made it, but not all, and only a few students in the back of the room made it. He concluded by saying, "The closer you were to the recycling bin, the better your odds." This is what privilege looks like. Did you notice how the only ones who complained about fairness were in the back of the room? By contrast, people in the front of the room were less likely to be aware of the privilege they were born into. All they can see is 10 feet between them and their goal. Your job as students who are receiving an education is to be aware of your privilege and use this particular privilege called education to do your best to achieve great things, all the while advocating for those in the rows behind you.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's have a round of applause for our technical guy. It is. It's a miracle right here at South Church. So, you get it, right? The point is that we are to take our privilege and we are to do great things with it. We are to make our society a better society. We are to make our neighborhoods a better neighborhood. We're to make our cities better cities. And we are to advocate for those in the rows behind us. Guilt is out of this. Responsibility is everything. Jesus says after this that the temple is going to fall down. And it does actually fall down. The symbol of that culture, the symbol that elevated the scribes to the highest levels, is going to fall. And it did fall. And Judaism had to reframe itself and remain still, of course, a very powerful and positive force in the world today. I'm not here to say that the temple's going to fall down. But in the year 2050, whites will be a minority in this country. And I wonder, what will it look like in 2050? Will we use our privilege to keep people in an inequitable position in our culture? Or will we use our privilege to advocate for those in the rows behind us? My grandson Otto will be about my age in 2050. I'm hoping he's got a grandson coming along. And I'd like that world for them to be the world that was Jesus' dream, a place where widows and orphans and the oppressed have others who advocate for them so they too can have an equitable voice and participation. Amen.